But my enemy is a notion, not a nation. It is wrong to compel obedience, whether to the British Crown or the Templar Cross.
Assassin's Creed 3 was a little mixed when received, but slowly grew to be a gem. I loved the game from the beginning, and after playing through the whole game again for the video, it just made me love it more. Before we get into it, let me know down below what your favorite Assassin's Creed game is. So let's just leap right into this game and what made it great.
The people have made their choice, and it was Washington.
People chose nothing. It was done by a group of privileged cowards seeking only to enrich themselves.
The story had a very unique challenge. It was ending the Desmond story while also introducing a new ancestor. Overall, this story should have been longer. I actually have almost no issue with how this game was for a majority of it. There are just some moments that are rushed, and I wish we had more time to really delve into certain relationships and moments. The story starts off in an extremely unique way, in that we don't play as an assassin, but rather a Templar. And we get to see this twist slowly unravel. We watch as Haytham grows the Order and sets up their plans, before he falls for a Native American and has a child. We get to play as Connor then, as a kid, and watch him grow up to become an assassin and fight within the Revolutionary War. We see that Connor is trying to avenge his mother, but I love that we also see he's primarily fighting for his people and their land. I remember meme after meme about Charles Lee, but honestly, there's a lot more to it than that, even if Charles Lee is a major douche. The ones who came before have a bigger part in this one. I love that Connor's tribe had pieces of Eden, and that's what led Connor to the Creed. I was shocked with how this game actually did deal with some of the heavy topics. Achilles helps Connor to be able to have less issues and blend in. Then there's also Connor, who isn't scared to call out people doing wrong, like he did with Sam Adams and slavery.
It's good to see the people finally taking a stand against injustice.
Says the man who owns a slave.
The tragedy that for all our progress, still we cling to such barbarism.
Then speak out against it.
We must focus first on defending our right.
You speak as though your condition is equal to that of the slaves. It is not. You offer excuses instead of solutions. All people should be equal, and not in turns.
It's in turns, or not at all.
This game made me want a game set in the Civil War period. They show that both sides had wrong elements, from Charles Lee and Haytham to even George Washington. One of the best moments in this game is when Haytham and Connor are together, where they argue about their ideals. It reminded me why I love the X-Men. The way Connor and Haytham debated, it was very similar to Professor X and Magneto. The way they argued their beliefs, both hoping the other will see it the same way, but knowing deep down they won't. The story also helped both the Assassins and the Templars seem less one-dimensional. As much as I love this game, the modern day here does feel very 2012. The modern day is a race to get to artifacts in hopes to stop 2012. Desmond is probably at his best here, and we really see the effect everything is having on him from the past few games. But I personally want a little more time with him to really delve deep into these characters. As great as this story is, it's kind of rough to get through. And it's because, at the end of the day, you know Connor doesn't exactly succeed. You see how hard he fights, and knowing it's all in vain.
When my people go to war, a hatchet is buried into a post to signify its start.
You could have used a tree.
There was a lot added to the gameplay here, and all are great additions. You now have hunting abilities, and with that comes more weapons like the bow and even the rope dart. While all of that is fun, I know for the majority of people, their favorite addition was sailing the sea. This definitely laid the foundation for Black Flag. The developers did a whole bunch of smaller details in this game, and I love all of it. They could have copied and pasted the old fight and running animations, and while there are similarities to previous games, there are bigger differences. The fighting and takedown animations are drastically different. The running animations are changed a lot too, and not just compared to the previous games, but even just Haytham. He isn't able to climb trees, but Connor can, and both can run and swiftly go around pillars or trunks that are in their path. We also can't forget about the fact that the axe does actually stay in the pillar until Connor feels it's resolved. While we're talking about the animation stuff, we can't forget to mention cool things like how Connor clenches his fist whenever the player pushes the fast walk button. There's just so many small details to this game that just adds volumes to it. The game's music and sound is also just amazing. The series does well at making sure the music fits the time period and even the area you're in. This even includes the dialects used for Connor as he's speaking his native language. It was also appreciated that when his victim took their last breath, he provided a line or two from his own language, or even some of the actions of taking a moment after killing an animal. Since we're mentioning the tribes, it's also what we truly loved about the old Assassin's Creed writing style and story overall. The days, of course, are historically marked, but even down to the detail of the common tribes for that area and time, which marked the natives from Connecticut to Ohio to New York to Delaware. These tribes were common to this area, and at the end, we even get confirmation that they went west. Kind of makes you miss the days when they really cared about historical accuracy.
Well, now, I'm going to feed you your teeth.
And you were worried I was going to be the problem?
The characters in this game are overall fantastic. Some of my opinions on the side characters stay the same, like Rebecca's still pretty cool and Sean's a dick. I will give him credit since he is less of one in this game. It is also possible that he's overshadowed by other douchebags though. The new side character, like Connor's mom, is small but interesting addition. We see she definitely influenced Connor in the small amount we've seen. She's willing to fight for what she wants and definitely won't back down from a fight. She's another reason why I wanted this game to be longer. I wanted more of her and really see the effect she had on Connor and Haytham. We also have to deal with Desmond's dad a lot more in this game, and Ash and I both hate him. Pretty sure our hatred for him is what made Sean more tolerable in this game. William isn't exactly a great father. He treats Desmond like crap and more like a tool than a person. Even when he tries, it still feels like he's just doing it out of obligation.
It's hard enough taking a life, but letting one be taken? Knowing there was something I could do about it? Not a chance.
Desmond is great in this game. We see him being more caring when interacting with his team, but we also see him taking less crap from them too, like when he finally snaps on his dad.
You want to know what's wrong? I'm sick of being treated like I'm not even here. I'm sick of being a goddamn pawn. I thought it might be different with you. I mean, you're my father, but turns out you're no better than the fucking Templars.
Don't you ever equate me to those bastards again.
Despite his dad being a total asshole, he still does care about him and is even willing to risk his life to make sure they get him back at the end of the game. I get the world is at stake, but for most fathers, their kid is their world. This wasn't the case for William. We also see how willing Desmond is for stuff, and so much so that he has faith that people will stop Juno and gives his life for the world. This game continues the similarities between Desmond and his ancestors. Ezio and Desmond were similar because they're both thrown into the assassin's life. Now we have Connor. His and Desmond's stories are both tragedies. Since this is technically the end of Desmond's life, looking back, we see how sad his story really is. He was forced to grow up in a life he didn't want, but was forced back into it. Evolved to be more of a tool than a person, just to save the world, and no one knows, and a lot who do, don't care as much as they should. He never really got to live his own life, or do the things he wanted. He did everything out of obligation to his family and friends and just the world in general. Much like Connor, he also knew he had to fight the fight. And even if he didn't see the outcome, he had confidence that he made a difference and the ones left would carry on with progress.
He will wait. He will watch. And then, when he's seen all his life's work brought to ruin, only then will I allow him to die.
The main villain for this game is another great terrible person, and apparently likes Bane monologues.
We will destroy Gotham. And then, when it is done, then you have my permission to die.
Charles Lee has no remorse for other people and manages to get away or protected for so freaking long. This man is a snake, and I personally like how it shifted from having Haytham being the main antagonist to becoming Lee. Charles is smug and ruthless. You see him at the start of the Boston Massacre, and he has a smirk since the sneaky bastard knows he's about to get away with it. I was also shocked with how long it took for him to notice and remember Connor. Like, how many kids has this prick choked that he has trouble remembering? I do like that a lot of his character comes from almost a form of cockiness. You see his extreme distaste for Washington, and he believes he could and would do better, not just as general, but leader overall. When he doesn't get his way, he begins to do things to screw over Washington and make him look bad. Perfect example is when he flees from battle in hopes the soldiers die and Washington loses the post. Fleeing became this man's main skill. Flees battle, gets lucky and flees before Connor comes, but kills Haytham instead, and finally just runs away when Connor finally comes for him and he's out of options. In his final moments though, he does kind of remind me of Haytham, because you see he has no regrets and would do it all again.
In your haste to save the world, boy, take care you don't destroy it.
Achilles was a fantastic addition. For majority of the game, I liked him, but wanted more, and I still stand by that. We see him in his later years, and he's still mobile, but still clearly injured. He's a good teacher to Connor, and I love his relationship with him. Connor helps him believe again and keep moving forward. Even when they have their disagreement, you understand both sides. I love that Achilles is also pretty smart and smug. We see him make smart comments to Connor about race, and helps Connor be able to settle in and go through it with even less hate than he would normally get.
Better to be thought a Spaniard than a native. And both are better still than I.
That is not true.
What's true and what is aren't always the same.
He doesn't shy away from racial issues, rather he handles them tactfully. We also have the moment where he teaches Connor the hard way by leaving him alone at the Boston Massacre. What I love about him is that so much is confirmed by the end of the game. I assumed he had a family, but wasn't sure. But by the end of the game, you see he had a wife and a kid. a kid named Connor. That knowledge explains so much for his character, like why he gave up on building the Creed and how he viewed Connor. He knew being a mentor was going to be very similar to being a father, especially for someone like Connor.
Even when your kind appears to triumph, still we rise again. And do you know why? It's because the Order is born of a realization. We require no creed.
Haytham is a great character. He's a very skilled Templar, despite not being the best father. The man is also a very smooth talker and very good at getting what he wants, and when someone opposes, he has the strength and skill to back it up. Haytham is also interesting since it's very clear he doesn't view the Native Americans and just people in general as his colleagues do. Hickey is literally selling people, and Lee made it clear he doesn't like other types of people either. I like how he views people as people, while also viewing them as tools and is perfectly okay instigating and using them to get what he wants. I do like that Haytham stands by the choices he makes, especially in moments where most people would reverse to something else in order to make amends or please people. The perfect example of this is actually when he's dying.
Don't think I have any intention of caressing your cheek and saying I was wrong. I will not weep and wonder what might have been.
He's clearly not happy about it at all, but he accepts it and stands by the choices he made. This whole section was insane to me the first time I played this. I thought Haytham would die off screen or to the hands of someone else. I did not expect him to die at the hands of Connor. Haytham had his loyalties and stuck to them way more than I expected. I thought that moment was going to be a double boss fight with Lee or something. I never expected to fight Haytham alone, and that would be his final moment in the game. This was a rough moment because I really enjoyed both characters. He really felt like a Palpatine, always having a plan and watching closely over his underlings while not afraid to use them.
Some days mine feels an impossible task, but I cannot afford to be consumed with doubt. People need me.
I personally loved Connor and wish we had more of him. While Ezio's probably my favorite assassin, Connor is definitely up there and I love the differences. Ezio is very smooth and had finesse in how he fought, but Connor is the polar opposite. This guy's a freaking tank. He is brutal with how he fights. Connor is just a total badass, despite his story being a tragedy. I love seeing his growth to becoming an assassin. He's also very caring. He clearly cares about his tribe, but he also cares about people in general. The homestead really shows this. While I personally never did all of these missions, each one I did was enjoyable. Connor fought so hard for his people and was willing to help others, but he didn't want to be a pawn to people like Washington and Adams and inevitably failed. Washington hunted his people and Adams tried his best to use him in any way he could, like what happened at the Boston Tea Party. All of this makes sense why he's standoffish and blunt to these people. Unfortunately, these people were necessary evil. His best and worst trait is his stubbornness. Connor was willing to spend days outside until Achilles was willing to take him in and train him. He does sometimes let it get in the way, but positive side is even though we know he kind of fails in the end, we know and have confidence that he won't give up fighting the fight against the Templars. We know he will fight as hard as he possibly can to make a difference, and even more so to make sure no one has to go through what he has gone through. He fights for more than himself. He fights for hope. Even when Connor loses, he doesn't lose hope or even faith. He was willing to grow past the creed and do what he could to just get peace and unity. While some may consider it naive, Connor does not. He wants equality and peace and will do what he can to make sure it happens.
You diminish your role, but you have always been of humble heart.
I do what is right. No more, no less.
Connor was often referred to as stupid when the game came out, but I genuinely disagree. He's more naive, and even so, those opinions are kind of because we know in the end Connor fails. People who know about it consider him less intelligent or too trusting because we see him following history moments. But if he was smarter or more discerning, then most likely most of the game wouldn't have happened. Connor has an interesting relationship with his father. He wants to trust him, but is very skeptical since he is a Templar. Both aren't afraid to speak their mind and follow their morals.
You killed him. You killed all of them. Why?
They'd have warned the Loyalists.
You could have held him until the fight was done.
What? And waste precious time and money on their care?
What I love the most besides the dynamic is that Haytham makes a small effect on him. Connor doesn't jump into loving him and believing his father. Instead, he buys into some things, but is still skeptical about most of him. Connor, much like his father, is also willing to stick to the mission since he actually kills Haytham. I was most concerned about how it would affect Connor. He has guilt, but also anger towards his father, and it's completely understandable. Connor is just an extremely tragic character. This is a person who watched his mom die, grew up, and eventually had to fight and kill his best friend. They had different views and were both pawns of the outsiders. He begins to almost trust his father, but ends up having to kill him. Connor even spent time helping Washington and his side just to lose what he was fighting for, his people. In the end, Connor's story left me feeling sad and empty. but his personality left me feeling optimistic and ready to keep fighting.
Because I believe things can still change. I may never succeed. The assassins may struggle another 1,000 years in vain, but we will not stop.
I personally love this game and everything it added. Connor will always be one of my favorite assassins. Connor also just gave great representation for Native Americans who aren't represented enough in media. What are some things you enjoyed about this game? Let's talk about everything Assassin's Creed 3 down below in the comments. And until next time, stay nerdy and keep binging.